I've been asked to go a little tour around the shop. I want to let everybody, I guess, kind of know what I do and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm just a local handyman and I play around with a lot of wood projects, fixing whatever comes along. So a lot of the stuff I have in my shop are just projects I've worked on and I fool around with it and try to make it as best I can. And we have a little bit of fun with it. If you follow me on YouTube, you'll see some of my projects. I think most of them look pretty decent. I'm not a professional photographer either, so we will do this off my phone and see if we can get you some good shots, and I'll kind of talk about what I have in the shop. So we'll start the tour. Okay, we're walking into the shop. I do have my setup of commonly used tools here that pretty much fix what I need to mechanically and screw guns and such. I do a lot of different projects in here, so I do have a office setup, security systems, this kind of thing in here, because I do reference YouTube videos and this type of thing out here a bunch. So I do have ways of watching that and looking up parts and this type of thing for repairs. I also repair computers, so I have a few of those out here, which this environment is definitely not the best with the dust and dirt that's stirred up from the shop with woodworking around, but it is what it is, and we have a good little spot out here. It's a good place to get away from the house. As far as tools go, probably one of my favorite ones would be this 20-inch planer. I replaced the head on that and put in a helical head system in it, I don't know, I guess a year ago, and it's out there on a website. Also shows some of the improvements and things that that does for me. So that's a pretty nice piece of equipment. It's set up to have part of the dust collection system, which we're going to kind of walk through here in a minute. I've got a jet drum sander, a 1632 drum sander, and the hose is of course the dust collection system, which I guess we'll go ahead and try to talk about this a little bit. I've had to modify my dust collector a pretty good bit. I burned up my first one because things were kind of getting into the fan blades. This one here is a Shop Fox. It's a 2 horsepower dust collection system. It has the clear bag. It collects the fine particles, and I've had that running for quite some time, and that's all I've got down there because of the way I've set this up. The problem with these are if you do something and you get big chunks in here, of course the inlet to the fan is here, and everything you suck into the system goes through the fan and then into the bag, gets separated through the separator, which is this portion of it, and the big pieces drop to the bottom, but they do go through the fan. My first one, I had some treated lumber I was routing and collecting up the dust and the particles, and they actually wrapped around the fan and choked it out and burned my motor up before I realized it was happening. So I came in and I've kind of added a first stage into this. So it comes in, and I've built the old separator that I had in my old Craftsman dust collector, which is basically the same setup as what the Shop Fox is. So I bring that into the top through the pipe, so my hose coming in from the inlet, and I can keep an eye on it, make sure it's not plugged up. It doesn't add a efficiency to it, but I can at least see what's going on, make sure that the dust is coming through and that type of thing. So I kind of like that. I've done some tests, and the actual vacuum pressure really hasn't lost any through there. You do get a little bit more turbulence probably of the air. But it comes in and gets separated, and then in the bottom, I simply have a front that comes off, and there's a 55-gallon trash can that's built into here so that I can pull that out and clean it. When it's running, it actually takes that vacuum or that bucket and really seals it up right tight. It'll suck it right up to the bottom of the separator. So it works pretty well. I don't get a whole lot of dust and dirt around it. And there again, I'll say I've tested the pressure, the vacuum on each of my hoses at different stations. But it makes it easy to change, a whole lot easier than the bag that would normally be on there. So for the dust collection, though, I do run that up, and I have it running completely through my shop. We come across on the first one, and I bring it out to the separator here, which is going to be the closest one to the vac system. And on that is a hose that I can use to either run to the sander, or I can take it and put it to the planer. This is a 4-inch hose, which works fairly well, but the planer really could use a 5-inch hose on it and a little bit bigger system because it is a 21-inch. So it still does, depending on the wood you're doing, the narrower boards really doesn't have enough vacuum around it to collect a lot of the dust, but it does get the majority of it, so it does keep it fairly clean around here. So it gets vacuumed into there, and of course I've made all my gates, and I think I have some videos of these also, to where you can close them off and open them, and they seal up pretty tight. Like I say, I've shown some videos on those and how they work. And from there, I actually have it goes up and into my ceiling, and at that point separates off, and one side comes over and drops down here to take care of several tools, and then the other half of it drops over and comes down and handles my saw station. So let's look at the first station here as we come down through. I've got, this comes into a big header that I built because I have so many tools behind it that I wanted to collect the dust on, sanders, routers, and this type of thing. So my main header coming in has a main shut valve that opens, closes to turn this header on. That basically isolates all these ports. And then after you get in here, then each one of them, as you open that one up, if you need to run one, you simply open up the tool that you're going to use, and it allows you to vacuum off that. I've got one spare port in case I decide to add another tool, or I have used it for vacuuming the shop, that kind of thing. And then I come over, and my final port goes to my floor sweep system, so I can just sweep the sawdust into that and let it return back up. Seems to be a pretty efficient system. Collects up the dust pretty well. I can't really complain about it too much. It gets the majority of it, the fine dust for sure. After that, I've got me a Delta sander, belt and disc sander. And of course, I've got the rigid orbital sander here, and belt sander that also has the belt on it. That seems like had good luck with that. I have an old router table. Needs a new router, but it still works. I leave a bit on there, a round over bit set up, so I don't have to try to adjust it because it doesn't adjust. So once you set it, it's pretty much there. But it's a handy bit to have, and it stays in the router at all times. The next station is another router. This is a little bit nicer Bosch router. Everybody has to have at least 3 or 4 routers. Otherwise, you spend all your time swapping out bits for everything you do. Also keep a portable router down there, one I can use loose on it. So that's my tool lineup. And then on the other side of this, as the dust collector goes, it comes down and it ties in to my joiner. And my joiner, that also I swapped out here recently and got the helical head on it. Absolutely love the helical heads. They're, to me, worth every penny of them, even though they are a little expensive. But that comes down, and it also has a gate here that I hook up, and it opens, closes to allow this hose, and that goes over and ties into the back of the table saw. Do that. If the hose is in my way, it's a pretty simple kick it out the way, and I can slide that up under the table, and then I don't have to trip over it coming down through my hallway. So that makes it fairly convenient also. But then we have, that's a little bit jerky, okay. The pipe comes across and falls down here, and we've got the other one that goes to my radial arm saw and my chop saw. And the chop saw does pretty good. It's hard to kind of get that set up a whole lot, but it's ports in there, and you can see there's a little bit of dust that's left behind. But as you're cutting, and depending on the angle that you're cutting, it does a good job. Here again, you have to open the port up, and you can see the hole lines up with the hose and the tool that you're using. So you just have to valve in the one you're doing. And on this side, we have the radial arm saw. As you see, this has a capability of doing 45-degree angles and all this, but I have other tools to do that. So this one really I just use for rough cut, bigger lumber and this type of thing. It's got a bench that can hold a 16-foot piece of wood from the saw to the end of the bench. So that pretty much takes care of any large lumber. And then as far as trim, I have 16 foot from that saw to that end of the bench. So I can saw pretty much any length of lumber I need to in here without having to swap out too much. Now this saw box, and somebody had asked about it, really doesn't have a whole lot there, and I probably could have got away with less box if I had cut this right in half and just let the air come out of it. Didn't know exactly how it was going to work. I put a little ramp to it, and when I cut, it feeds right into it very nicely, and it's probably one of the better collectors I have out here on any of the tools. It leaves very little mist to it. And that just has the hose there again, stuck through the hole and sealed up so that it collects up as it comes out. Nothing really too technical about it. And like I say, I've just been playing with it to see if it works. So that's pretty much the tools in the workbench. And then on this bench, I've also got a new Wilton vise. Man, those things are sweet. If anybody's in the market for a vise, that's highly recommended. There, I think that's adds a lot to the bench. So we built this out of some pine that I had left over, and knowing that it's going to get beat up, but it does really good to have a good bench. Makes for a good work surface as you're cutting your main boards, setting them over onto the bench. And then you can rip them down by turning around and going down through the table saw onto the feed table there, or you can join them. We also have our band saw and drill press over in this corner, so we always have this workbench set up and ready to use on that. I tried to get the shop to flow fairly smoothly by coming in the front door, overhead door. I do have one tool that I use a fair amount that most shops don't usually have, and that would be a panel saw. So we can bring it straight in the door, cut the big panels up, and then move them around the shop as needed. We keep a fairly stocked miscellaneous trim rack and lumber just to keep us going. Nothing exotic. And I just added this to the workshop, a new lathe. So we're setting this workstation up as a turning station. So we'll go ahead and add some turning tools and a little better light over the top of it and make that good station out here in the open. That won't have a dust collection, but should work out to be a pretty decent setup. And I guess probably one of the last things I have that's kind of a nice thing to have in the shop on occasion is I do have my metal brake back here in the corner. So I can brake metal. Back in the days I used to do a little bit of vinyl work and replacement windows. So that pretty much takes you through the shop, all the nails and hardware. Try to keep organized, and it works fairly well. So. But that's pretty much the shop. If anybody has any questions or why I did things the way I did them, I'd be more than happy to answer you. But I enjoy it, and like I say, I don't pretend to be a professional. I do a lot of experimenting out here, and I learn, and I think that's what I enjoy the most. So we'll see y'all on the next project.